list now, and to illustrate the point, Jenny wanted a clarification. So this is an excellent illustration on the topic we discussed now. This is a summary by Dr. Satyan. Most of you might know Dr. Satyan. You might have watched his excellent lectures on PPHN. So he is an excellent medical illustrator as well. That's his passion, and he's from Mysore as well. You can see here how he has nicely summarized the systematic review. I had shared the original article in the group. I mean, you can review that if you have not already done so. So it's a network meta-analysis with individual participant data. So the authors basically contact the studies where the units where the studies were done. They get the participant data for the eligible ones, and then they look deeper into it. So there were 12 randomized studies with 1,055 preterm infants less than 32 weeks. And the gestational age range was 26 to 30 weeks. The weight range was, the mean weight was 1,070 grams. So it's not very tiny babies in some of the studies. So the range is different from what we expect to see. So basically, they have increased mortality in the babies who are managed with 21 to 30% compared to those managed with 90%. This was shown to be significant, but it's the strength of evidence is said to be weak. They didn't have enough evidence in the 60% group to compare with either the 90% or the 21 to 30% range. And the mechanisms by which in a premature baby, the higher oxygen might help is because when you start with the lower oxygen concentration, we have the RDS lung. So the premature lung is still in the canalicular phase. The bronchioles are thick. There is a... Dr. Priyanka, please mute yourself. Dr. Priyanka, please mute yourself. So the hypoxia is suppressing the respiratory drive. That's one of the mechanisms for apnea of prematurity as well. And you see that it was demonstrated that the laryngospasm is present in babies who are more hypoxic at birth, and your ventilation with CPAP may be more successful if you start with a higher FiO2. The alveolar capillary interface is thick, again because of the RDS picture. The pulmonary arteries are naturally vasoconstricted when the baby is born, but when the gas exchange is impaired, the oxygen doesn't reach the pulmonary arteries to cause the adequate vasodilatation. So that causes poor response to pulmonary dilatation to oxygen because oxygen doesn't reach. And of course, the ductus in this case is having a right to left shunt because the pulmonary pressures are still high. This is different from what happens in the term baby where you don't have the RDS picture. The pulmonary vessels dilate quickly. So you're worried about the brain as well, and you don't want hyperoxia in the term baby. So that's why the room air resuscitation became the trend. Now the question is not about whether we need oxygen or not. All of us agree that we would start with 30 to 40%. And last week, one of you asked the question and I explained that 30 to 40%, and in the extreme premature babies, you can even start with a little higher. But the question is, do we have enough evidence to take the conclusion that this systematic review has brought out? The answer is likely to be no, because they are basing their conclusions based on a little different analysis of what was already existing. And we don't have clear-cut data on the 60% group. So it's most likely we will get the results of the high-low 2, the high-low oxygen trial 2 and the torpedo 2 trials, both of which are looking at this. They don't look at the 90% anymore because they feel that 90% may not be needed. So they are going to look at 60 and 30% oxygen comparison. So once we get those results, we can combine these in the same model and probably we'll get the right answer for that. So till that time, don't change your practice. The AAP, the ILCOR recommend 30% for the premature babies. You can go to 40 to 50%. And in a situation where Dr. Priyanka explained, you can start higher and come down faster. But most likely the answer is going to lie with 50 to 60%, and hopefully the new studies will tell us. So don't change your practice based on this study. It's an indication that we might have a better response. There is a physiologic plausibility. Again, don't increase slowly. If the baby is having a bradycardia, is not responding, you can go quickly up in the FiO2 because, as Dr. Narasimha mentioned, the heart rate at 5 minutes as well as the saturation at 5 minutes in these babies predicts the outcome. If saturation is less than 80% or the baby is still bradycardic by 5 minutes, it's not a good sign for the premature babies. Higher risk of IVH, higher mortality rate. So don't be too hesitant. Like in the NRP guidelines, if the baby needs chest compression, you go to 100% oxygen. Similarly, If a baby is in poor condition, you can quickly go to 100% in those babies. So there's a difference between doing the same for every baby to selecting the babies. And if you do select the baby is sick, you go to 90 to 100% quickly in these babies. No need to titrate 5%, 10%. So similar to the CPR babies, you can do the same for these babies as well. That's the point about oxygen. Now, quickly, we will go to the point Dr. Jenny had requested. So this is the pressure volume loop, and most of you would be familiar with that. This is pressure on the x-axis, volume on the y-axis. So we have the lower inflection point where the lung compliance starts improving and the lung is opening up. This depends on the severity of the lung disease. In RDS, this may continue for a longer time. You need a higher pressure to reach this point, and after that, the lung starts inflating. Then you reach the upper inflection point, and if you continue distending the pressure beyond that, you get beaking or over distension. So by hysteresis, you can come back to the same pressure, same volume by dropping the pressure as well. So this phenomenon is called hysteresis, where once the lung is recruited at the same at a lower pressure, you can maintain the same volume. So that's the principle of recruitment and dropping the pressure in high frequency as well. So the same principle applies in non-invasive and invasive ventilation and high frequency. So the C20 by C simply means you have the compliance curve, the line which shows the compliance of the lung. You have the inspiration and expiration both have different compliance because the dynamic compliance has the airflow parameters included in it. So this is a dynamic compliance, and that's why the airway parameters contribute, the way of gas flow contributes. It's different for the inspiration and it's different for the expiration. And if there is the last 20% of the compliance curve is the C20, and you compare it with the general, the average compliance for that baby. And if the last 20% is more than 1, it means the tidal recruitment should be more. But if it is less than 1, it means that your pressure is increasing without any improvement in the volume in that part. That's the beaking part. So if the C20 by C is less than 1, many of the modern ventilators reflect this on the side. You can include that in one of the parameters you monitor. So if the C20 by C is less than 1, it indicates over distension or beaking. So this is the point. I hope it's clear. And we are almost out of time. We'll have time for a couple of questions. I'll stop sharing as well. So any questions on Dr. Narasimha's presentation? Dr. Karthik, you have any points to make?
No. Thank you. Narasimha, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. And for the clarity on the target saturation, that's the most important we have to be concerned. But recently, I had an opportunity to attend a conference in North India, the North Neocon as we call it. There is now emerging data that the target saturations which have been published by the ILCOR in 2020 are going to be changed very soon because lesser time is required to reach those target saturations. So probably the next coming up version of ILCOR, this will be mentioned. And Dr. Satyan Lakshmi Narasimha, as Dr. Sridhar was talking about, is the chair of that committee. So probably we'll be getting to see that publication very soon. That is in the future. And of course, other things have been well covered by Dr. Narasimha. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Any questions from any of you? Dr. Pritish, you have your own unit. I hope you have enough blenders. And do you have any feedback to Dr. Priyanka for what she can get?
No, it's okay. Nice presentation. I want to know about that dynamic compliance and static compliance that is shown in the ventilator screens.
Yes.
How and also the optimum PEEP, so that increasing the PEEP and over distinction doesn't occur like that.
So clinically, we are used to looking at the chest recessions, and on the ventilator graphics, you are looking at where the lower inflection point is. Of course, you have a range. You don't want to overdo PEEP, but you don't need to be scared of PEEP. So the term PEEPophobia is used. So if you are within the PEEP range of 5 to 8, you can try increasing the PEEP to reach the lower inflection point. So you are bringing it closer to where the lung will open up. But usually we don't exceed 8 in the immediate RDS phase. If you're needing a very high PEEP, it's an indication for surfactant if the baby needs high oxygen as well. So don't overdo because there is a risk of air leak. And in terms of looking at the, what was your question? It was about
dynamic compliance and static compliance.
Actually, Priyanka had mentioned, and I would like to point out that the last batch we had excellent student presentations, and you are having access to it. And the same week that she has mentioned, February 14th, you can go to the case presentation files.
Okay.
You have the OCS sessions. There is one good lecture by Dr. Akanksha Dubey on compliance, and towards the end of it, she explains very well. And also, it's part of the talk by Dr. Razak as well. So, static compliance simply means that it's without eliminating the chest wall and airway factors. And dynamic compliance brings in both these components. You know, the chest wall compliance is high and the lung is balancing with it. If the lung is stiff, the chest wall is dragged in and that resistance is adding. And the airway resistance matters if you have AT tube, if you don't have AT tube, if you're on CPAP. So all these will matter. So the dynamic compliance is basically what you actually have in clinical practice. So the recessions you're seeing is a balance of everything. So the dynamic compliance is balanced by your clinical assessment as well as what you see the indices on the curve. So go through this. Dr. Akanksha's presentation is very good on that. I would recommend, and it's good that the Metrain team has made it available. So if anyone doesn't know the path, you can message in the group and one of them will feed back to you. So it's basically case presentations from the previous batch that you will see. All the OCS and probably the PCS is available as well. And can you answer my question to help Dr. Priyanka? What blenders do you use?
We have that we have a central oxygenation system.
Okay.
And ventilators, and through CPAPs we use them.
In the labor room, you don't have blenders as well. Try to get blenders, and Dr.
No,
Karthik.
labor we don't have. Our hospital doesn't have labor room. We have to go to other gynecologists hospitals for the labor.
Okay. So try to implement a use of blender in the gynecologists whom you support as well. So everyone is educated on this topic as well.
Sridhar, can I just make a point?
Yes,
somebody had even asked earlier. Now these transport CPAP devices are available, which have built-in blenders. And I can share one picture in the group, which is now available in the market. And it's got a battery backup of 4 hours with a turbine flow, which generates compressed air. And you can just connect oxygen and you can have an FiO2 control on that. And it's got a manometer for the pressure. So it's a very compact device, and probably smaller centers can go for that. Can use it in the labor room and the Nicu and during transport also. I'll share it in the group.
Dr. Talib, please proceed.
Yes, I'm an instructor in NRP in my country. So we recommend for those who doesn't have a blender in the delivery room to start PPV with Ambubac without connecting the flow from air, from air, for example. Yes. So we deliver 21% oxygen for the baby. When we need to increase, we connect the source of oxygen to the Ambubac without reservoir, without bag. So the oxygen will deliver 40%.
40%, yes.
Yes, and when we need to go over the 40, so we connect the reservoir, and the baby will get 90% of oxygen. I think it will helpful this method to give.
So that's a good point. The only problem is the PEEP. I mean, you may buy an additional PEEP valve for the ambu bag as well, the Leardal bag. I mean, so if you have the additional PEEP valve when you use this is in between, like we discussed for the Venturi effect based one. So it's not ideal, but it's better than just doing 100% oxygen or room air. So thank you, Dr. Tadip, for the nice comment. So Dr. Deepika, you wanted to speak about the system in your place?
Yes, sir. In our delivery room, actually, we our delivery room and our OT is situated in different floors. So in our OT, there is a warmer where we can use this T-piece resuscitator. The blender is connected there because we have central lines. But in the labor room, where usually the normal deliveries takes place, we actually use this raw oxygen only from the oxygen source. We don't have a blender right now.
So try to discuss and bring it to your place as well, because labor room is where majority of the deliveries happen, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes. And
So
this
please,
concept is very new, sir, because in our like the conferences that happens here, they do not give emphasis on using blender in the delivery room.
yeah, you can be a driver of these things as well. You can generate interest in your team and in your groups as well. So very important to create awareness. I don't know how the ROP screening is happening in Bangladesh. Is it as intense as in India? They have criteria. You might have seen the NNF criteria, which goes to 34 weeks and 2 kilo. And I think this expansion of the guidelines happened only because of, uncontrolled use of oxygen without the use of blenders. So that's why we are getting these advanced aggressive anterior ROP in these posterior ROP in these babies. So do you have a similar problem in Bangladesh?
Yes, sir, because we are following the guidelines, but we are lacking the expertise. Actually, only the few of the government hospitals are having this expertise who can check for ROP, and here neonatologists also can't check for this ROP. So there is no training also. So you have to refer the child, but sometimes the children, premature babies, remain with us for about 1 month or 1.5 months. Then it becomes very challenging. And we are having babies who are facing these problems also.
It's a problem, and that's something from the government and the national bodies to look into as well. So I think we finished our quota of time, and anyone else wants to make a point, and Dr. Karthik's closing remarks, and we'll finish.